Everybody on this call, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to our very first CHS e-Open House. We are about to start our panel session on humanities at CHS. I'll hand the floor over to Prof. Loy, who is leading this session. Thank you.
Good to see you again. For some of you, this is probably like the third time you see my face already. Okay, so this is the humanities panel. I hope you can see the slide there. I have with me several very, very dear colleagues from representing different departments and different majors. But before we get to humanities, let me say a little bit about the larger context, right? So as you know, we are now in the College of Humanities and Sciences, and the two partners that made this happen, of course, are the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences and the Faculty of Science, right? And FASS is a very large partner. Both are very large faculties. We are looking at, even before CHS, we are offering 20 majors in 16 different departments, 13 languages. In any given semester, more than 200 modules are on offer. So this is a very large and very diverse and very well-resourced faculty, right? And it's organized around 3 divisions, roughly speaking: Asian Studies, we just came from the talk, there was Asian Studies, and now Humanities, and of course, Social Sciences, right? So this is the context. And we're here to talk a little bit. This panel is about the so-called humanities subjects, but we don't want to put too fine a pin on it as well, because these are, in some sense, all disciplinary boundaries are somewhat arbitrary, but traditionally, these are the so-called humanities subjects, right? Let's say, in fact, do you all still say language, or have you all changed to linguistics already? I don't even remember anymore.
We submitted a proposal for English language and linguistics.
Yeah, okay, so you see, even the names can adjust, right? So this is the 5 of us representing the 5 different disciplines. So the time is, we are already in it already. So our plan really is to first, each of us share, 3 minutes, 4 minutes on our respective majors. I'm going to give advance warning first. Susan, will you be able to go first? Would you like to go first, or you want someone else to go first?
I can go first if you want me to. And by the way, you may have noticed that Robin's slide has got Donna's name on it. So.
It's like I'm trying to close it to panel to the
Oh no, it's my fault. I'm going to correct it right now as we are talking, right? So I'm going to invite Susan first to start the sharing by talking about English literature. And after this, we'll go on down, to history, then to philosophy, then to language, and of course, finally, theater studies. So, yeah. Please, Susan.
Okay, fine, yeah. Hello, I'm Susan Ng from the Department of English Language and Literature. Literature, of course, as we know, is the study of literary texts, and this includes nowadays film as well as the more traditional kinds of texts like poetry, plays, and novels. However, literature is rather more than this dry description. It's the study of people, societies, what they do, how they do it, what they think, how they think it, what they feel, imagine, and what shapes and motivates human endeavor, and how all this has changed over time, and how all these things find forms of representation. And you realize while I'm saying this, that in fact, I'm not really just saying that literature is about literature. I'm saying that literature involves sociology, history, psychology, philosophy, language. So really, you don't really need to go to the other disciplines. You just need to come to us for a kind of one-stop encounter with all these other disciplines. Now, literature is for the kind of student who's interested in ideas in the subject, which is rich in human complexity, and we are interested in, and who's interested in language, and students, in fact, who like stories. Having an eye for detail is good, as is analytical ability, a sensitivity to language, having intellectual curiosity, and also intellectual courage. And I would, I think, add to that list the capacity for dealing with complexity, because good ideas tend to have complexity and texture, and human beings, who are at the root of all humanities subjects, are in fact complex creatures. Now, so one of the questions that we very often encounter at these kinds of talks is, what is it that literature graduates do after they graduate from our department? And most people, in fact, sort of think, well, it's only teaching. Who's interested in teaching? Let's not go to literature. Now, let me begin by saying that that's not true, because apart from teaching and journalism, there's also the civil service. And in fact, one of my ex-students is just about to get posted out by MFA to Geneva, and another has joined defense as an analyst. Many literature graduates end up as human resource or communications personnel. You can also go into writing, publishing, copywriting, librarianship, and some become even high-profile bankers. And in fact, one of our graduates is now an associate director with DBS, and another was the business manager of Microsoft Asia for corporate, external, and legal affairs. We even have the occasional YouTube star, such as Elliot Marcel Tan. And one of our most, in fact, if you're wondering whether COVID's affected any of our sellability, let me tell you that one of our most recent grads works for Facebook in security with a starting salary of 5,000. So let me end my spiel by saying that to those of you who are contemplating literature, but who may be anxious about it, that it's quite possible to do well in it, even if you've never done it before. So the banker that I mentioned just now was in fact originally a science student who in fact then ended up by graduating with a first class in lit. So what does literature at university involve? It involves more texts, more reading than A-levels, more complex analysis, more independent thinking, and more learning how to argue, defend, and justify your views. But should you be afraid? No. Why? Because you will be wanting to go on and grow and develop, and because we will be there to help you and to cheer you on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was kind of inspiring. Now I feel like Donna, would you like to go first? Talk about history, yes.
Yes, okay, thank you, Loy. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Donna Brunero from the Department of History. A brief intro to the discipline. In our department, we tend to say understanding the past gives you a better understanding of the present, but also the potential to chart the future. History is a field which helps us as individuals and as societies to understand why societies are the way they are. Studying history allows us to make linkages between past and present. History is not only the study of past events, but also the accounts and representations of the past. So this is some of the things that we'll explore in history. Studying history helps you in terms of developing important skills, such as your analytical thinking, evaluation, argumentation, and the way that you use evidence. Studying history also allows you to reflect on the universality of experiences. One idea just to throw out there would be that of the city in world history, that living in urban centers isn't such a preserve of any one culture or era. The ancient world, for instance, had megacities with problems that may seem very familiar, problems relating to water, crowding, and security. So history allows you to begin to sort of think across times and across eras. If you studied history in JC, some approaches may seem similar, but what we're doing in history at NUS is expanding your horizons in terms of the scholarship that you'll be immersed in. There's an emphasis on learning the craft of the historian, i.e. developing your research, your reading, and your writing skills. We won't just focus on content, but on developing your understanding of how historical thought has changed over time. Who should major in this? Actually, anyone with an interest in understanding the past, in thinking about connections between past and present, in understanding long legacies of global events such as war, revolutions, or empires. Aptitude or interest will help you develop your skills. But if you have an interest in heritage or in history or looking at the big picture, then this could be a good major for you. And then to follow on with what do our graduates do, because this is, again, always a very hot question. Teaching may seem the most obvious answer. And I would say yes, quite a few of our graduates do go on to become terrific teachers in secondary or junior colleges. But many use their skill set to move into other areas, such as the media. So for instance, writing for newspapers, magazines, or content production, the heritage industry, so libraries, museums, archives, also working in the government, so the National Heritage Board, Foreign Affairs, MINDEF, the NEA. So you can see there is a great deal of scope beyond the realm of just content. What we see in terms of a history grad is that history grads can use their skills and knowledge to handle large amounts of material, to be able to read critically, and to be really effective as communicators. These are all skills that are very marketable. So I'd encourage you to consider history, have a look at the history department and see the types of courses that we have on offer.
Fantastic. I don't know whether you guys know this, but I was almost a history major when I was a student, actually.
I had been told that.
In Donna's actual department, yeah. Leslie, it's your turn. Language and linguistics, yeah.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm representing the English language program, which offers an education in linguistics, which is the study of human language. Right. So the program covers a wide variety of qualitative and quantitative approaches, and we address topics such as the sound systems and grammars of different human languages, how language conveys meaning, language variation and change, the functions of language in society, multilingualism, language and cognition, language in the media, language and ideology, language endangerment and revitalization, as well as languages in Singapore, etc., etc. Right, as you would be able to tell from all those things that I've been listing, right, some of these modules focus on the unique properties of English as it is used around the world, but there are many others which are interested in general patterns that shape each and every language. So our goal is not to turn you into a walking reference grammar of English, right? And unlike the English language and linguistics subject at A levels, we don't focus exclusively on the English language, right? And just to add on to what Susan and Donna had already said, right? Like most other majors in CHS, the English language major is non-vocational, right? So we are not training you for a specific occupation, and our graduates go on to do many surprising things.
Thanks so much, Leslie. Robin, would you like to go first so I can go last?
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Robin Loon, and I'm from Theatre Studies. So, first of all, Theatre Studies is not an acting school. We do teach acting. So, if you want to be an actor, you can come and join us, but that's not what we teach only. 2, Theatre Studies is not a film or TV star factory. You might want to go nearby over to Buena Vista Media City for that. Now, I got to put a kind of light side to it because poor theatre studies has been so misunderstood and misrepresented. And I just want people to know that it is a respected discipline of study. And what do? We study theatre and performance, not just within the theatre building, but outside of it. So we look into media, we look into performances in everyday life. And that's pretty important. And I think to us to understand how human beings interact, whether they fall into certain patterns or whether we could read it in a particular way and its relationship to theatre, right? I'm very happy to be on this panel because when I was an undergraduate many years ago, I was a history and literature major with a minor in language. Sorry, Loy, there was no other way that I could take another subject, but I'm a full humanities person here. So I just want to tell you that what we do in theatre studies here, which is very different from what the A-level syllabus is doing, is that we are helping you develop thinking and doing through practice and research. So at that particular level. So we cover a wider and broader range of subjects from applied theatre to actual acting on stage. We also study some film text, and we also go into arts and the law. We also go into media and performance. So I'm going to echo what my colleague Leslie Lee has just said. Theatre studies is definitely not vocational. Although we're very proud to have a lot of our graduates going into the industry, they present themselves as theatre makers and performance makers, but with a slightly different edge because they are equipped with these thinking and doing skills that are honed and crafted with a lot of exposure to practice and to research. So we have graduates who go into F&B, who go into public service, the public sector, into teaching. So I think it is quite a wide range of graduates, wide range of professional possibilities that our graduates will have. But before I hand over to Loy, I just want to also say that, again, at this particular stage with the CHS and all, it's important for you to choose a subject that you have interest in. And if you have the aptitude for it, that will be even better. So interest, aptitude, hard work, these 3 things, your employer would rather look at a diploma that's full of A's
rather than a diploma full of C's and D's in what other people term a practical subject. So who would you hire? Would you hire somebody with full of A's or somebody with a B, C, B, C, C, and D? So how do you get the A's? Ask yourself, how do you get the A's? You get the A's for subjects you're interested and you have aptitude for and you have hard work. And you know what? We're it. That's my final pitch. Loy, over to you.
Oh my goodness. Always my good friend Robin is definitely okay. So my turn. I'm going to talk a bit about philosophy. Many of you would not have much experience of what philosophy is, but nowadays actually I'm getting more and more students in open house coming to me to ask, about the philosophy major, which suggests to me that there are more people in Singapore growing up who've apparently heard of this word at least. So let me say a bit about what it is. Nothing to be afraid of here, right? You can think of it as questioning the fundamental assumptions that all of us make, knowingly or unknowingly, right, about life, the universe, and everything, right? There are big words like, the metaphysics, or epistemology, language, aesthetics, and ethics and politics and all that. But really, at the bottom of it, we're looking at, think of it in two slightly different aspects. Right? One is the big questions regarding life, the universe, and everything. What is the universe really made of? What is right and wrong, right? But at the same time, it's not just about the big questions, but it's about attacking them rationally, attacking them with very, very sharp intellectual tools. So that in a package is, in a nutshell, is philosophy. I say a bit more, right? All of us, I assume, agree that it's wrong to torture puppies. If any of you say otherwise, we'll talk separately, okay, outside, right, okay? But why is it wrong? What makes it the case that some type of action is right or wrong? Or is it really actions that are right or wrong? Or maybe the better way to think about it, some people will agree, it's not actions that are right or wrong, but rather whether or not you have the right kind of character who will end up doing the good kinds of things as opposed to a bad kind of character. So those are difficult questions that people have puzzled over and continue to puzzle over, even though we all agree that torturing puppies is wrong, right? To go to Clementi from NUS, you take bus 96. It has always worked. Yesterday I did it, the day before I did it, it has always worked. How do we know, if I were to stand at the bus stop and the bus 96 comes down the road, how do I know that going on to this bus I will still get on the bus, don't get me wrong, right? But if I were to reflect upon that, what is it that makes it the case that our, as it were, induction based upon past experience is reliable for the future? That's a deep and difficult question. It concerns our assumptions regarding the uniformity and the nature of the world. It involves our reflection upon the nature of our knowledge processes as well, right? We all agree that Da Vinci produces art. Mona Lisa is art. Okay, so I guess there are things that are art and there are things that are not art. But how do we draw the line? What counts as art? Is it really a conventional thing, human thing, or is it a natural thing? Is it something that, once you understand the definition, is either art and no art, but there's no such thing as good art versus bad art? Or is it everything is all up for grabs, right? What makes something art and something not art? Do video games count? How about that? So these are all questions, let's just give you three examples. One is in ethics, one is in epistemology, induction, right? And one is in aesthetics. That's the kind of questions that we tend to ask ourselves in philosophy, right? They all sound very abstract. I give you that. Definitely, they are very abstract. Are they useful, right? Is it useful to think about such things? Now, this is where it's very important to understand why people study philosophy. In general, people study philosophy because they are really interested in these questions and they want to crack their heads on it, right? But if you think of it in a slightly more pragmatic way, this is actually really, really solid mental gym, okay? So they're not exactly the same thing. The analogy is kind of, you'll break down eventually, but think of it as, if you want to be the kind of person who is good at thinking very sharply, very carefully, very precisely, what do? If you want to be the kind of person who is able to lift things and you have good strength, your upper body strength and so on and so forth, it doesn't always mean that you go out into the field and do stuff, right? You go to a gym. So you can think of philosophy as if you're going to a gym. We're going to teach you how to think very sharply, very carefully, and very precisely about the big questions of the world. But those are not the only places in which we apply our sharp and careful thinking, right? Now, of course, the thing here is to remember, if you do philosophy, it's because you really want to learn the Kung Fu. You're not just consumers and watchers of Kung Fu anymore. You actually don't just want to sort of find out about it, you want to sort of taste it, but you actually say that these questions are so interesting to me. They keep me up at night that I actually want to learn how to think carefully and sharply about them. Okay, it's the kind of questions that puzzles everyone. Not everyone at every moment of your waking lives will be puzzled by these things, and not everyone will make it a professional thing. But I guess if you made it to the university, I would even say that everyone here, who made it to university will at least be puzzled by some of these kinds of questions, right? And that's where is something for you to explore. So if these big questions regarding life, the universe, and everything intrigue you, even in the slightest, consider taking at least the gateway module and any other 2011 module we have. We have a whole bunch of them, and all of them do not require any special background. We don't really expect that, and and there are many obvious ways to pair it with many other disciplines, including English and psychology and political science and all that. And among our graduates include people who are in the corporate sector, in the civil service, who are teachers and artists, middle-class artists, journalists, and so on and so forth. So that's all I have to say. Okay, let's start answering some questions. I think I went over by a little bit because I was so focused on saying things I didn't watch the time. Yeah. So there are some questions in the Q&A panel already. So maybe I just ask one that's directed at Robin first. May I know more about the further study opportunities available to theatre studies majors? Yeah.
Thank you, Loy. Now, just also wanted to tell you that you can do graduate studies in theatre and performance studies if that is what you're interested in. But to be perfectly honest, if you want to do graduate work and further studies, you need a strong honours degree. I'll give you a very good example. A couple of years back, a theatre studies major, very strong second upper, did a master's MSc in public policy in the 𝗂𝘂𝗺 School of Management and Public Policy with full scholarship. So you can ask, why would somebody, why would somebody in 𝗂𝘂𝗺 School of Public Policy take somebody with theatre studies? Well, because it's strong, and she sold her study and her angle to go into public policy very, very well. So at further studies, if you want to go graduate studies, what is very, very important is really a strong honours degree, and also your ability to project to the prospective institution a kind of pathway that you are heading. I think that's one of the most important things. So a strong honours degree is really, really important. And she got a full scholarship, and she was a theatre major.
Yeah. Here's a question for Donna. Will we be able to learn about art and culture also, or is it strictly the history of regions? Furthermore, is it possible to just specialize or focus on East Asia in depth?
Okay, thanks for those questions. You can, of course, go beyond what we would see as regional histories of regions, so East Asia, Southeast Asia, European history. We have an art history minor, so there is an art history program, but we also have courses on social history, popular culture, film and history, gender. So really, I think our department spans many different subfields, if you want to think about the approaches with history.
Yeah.
Has that answered all of the questions?
Yeah. Well, we can always circle back. Yeah. Someone wants to know what are the main differences between English literature and English language. So I guess Susan and Leslie will have to take a crack at this. Yeah.
Well, okay, Leslie, do you want to begin first?
Well, I guess the first and most obvious difference is that language does not focus only on English. And then I'll hand it over to Susan.
Well, I would sort of say that literature, in fact, does not only focus on language either. So in other words, there are many different aspects to literature. I mean, as I was mentioning just now, we're interested in societies and how human beings operate within the society. So that involves the politics, the history, everything else. But language is, of course, a fairly strong component of the discipline, meaning that it is how we access a lot of what's going on, whether we're looking at filmic texts or we're looking at poetry or plays or novels. So in other words, understanding the differences in the meanings of words makes a difference. But even though Leslie would probably sort of say, well, in formal language studies, we are actually more interested in things like grammar, syntax, sort of sociolinguistics, that kind of thing. Literature, in fact, occasionally bounces off that kind of slightly more technical understanding and knowledge of things in order to make a much more nuanced kind of statements, about the text. So in other words, if you're doing language, it generally feeds into whatever you're doing about literature as well, even though I would probably sort of say that every discipline that's represented here today, theatre studies, philosophy, history, all feed in. So in other words, you will be a better lit student if you have an understanding of all these other disciplines as well. So there's definitely some technical differentiation between language and literature, but a lot of overlap as well.
Yeah, and just to add on, I mean, there are also some modules that are cross-listed, so you can actually use them to fulfill both a language requirement or a literature requirement.
Yes.
And language and philosophy, philosophy and literature. So this one is for Robin, two of them. What's the difference between theatre and NTU broadcasting? You know, and another related one is still trying to understand sort of the job perspective for theatre studies. Yeah.
Right. So the difference basically for the NTU broadcasting, that is specifically on broadcasting. So they will teach you the study of that, and the degree that you will get in that is focused on broadcast. Here, we study theatre and performance on a broad spectrum. We do look at media. There is no film or TV making module here. That's not the emphasis. It doesn't mean that it is a purely academic, book-centered kind of discipline. But so we are very broad because ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, you are going to graduate with either a BA, a BSOC-Sci, or a BSc if you're part of when you come to CHS. It is that degree that you're getting with a major in A, or you can have a double major, or you can have it in that. So basically, it is about what is the constitution of your degree that makes you sellable to other people. So I just want you to focus on that. I'm going to echo what Leslie said. It is not vocational. You do not need, like an engineer, a Bachelor of Engineering degree in order to be an engineer. So we have to start moving away from this major will lead to this career. It doesn't work like that. I think we have to stop thinking. We have to stop thinking like this. Because if you think like this, then, you know, the BA degree, you would have undervalued it. So I'm kind of segueing to the second question here. Now, I've been looking at jobstreet.com.sg. And there is this job for, and I'm going to read you to what they want. The job is for an executive, entry-level executive for the digital grocery program. And this is what they're looking for, right? Key competences: interests in digital channels, attention to detail, good interpersonal skills, and ability to communicate effectively at all levels. Does it say bachelor? Does it say linguistics? Does it say sociology? What it does say, degree in business or equivalent. Equivalent. This is the job market, ladies and gentlemen. So stop attaching your major to a job. The world has changed. It's never worked like that. I don't know why people keep thinking it works like that. It's never worked like that. It definitely isn't working right now. I'm not making up. Go to jobstreet.com.sg. It's there. This is the key competences that people want. And for theatre studies, we are the person to go to for good interpersonal skills and ability to communicate effectively, because we have to collaborate, put together a show and present it to the people and sell it to the public. All right, so look at it. This is an entry-level executive job for a degree holder, right? If you're still interested, it's still available, okay?
So there's a related question. Many people think that philosophy is useless in the working world. I don't think so, but would like to know what kind of career prospects. So it segues from what Robin has been saying as well. And by the way, if you were not an employers forum in the 2 hours ago, the 1 to 2 slot, please go and watch that. Hear from the actual employers from industry themselves, okay? We told them, by the way, my briefing to them was, don't worry about representing NUS and the majors. Just tell us the truth about what the working world really is. Like, what are you guys really looking for? Guess what? Beyond a certain point, what you study only gets you through the door. It really doesn't determine what you want to do. Where are some of my philosophy graduates? I got an investment banker. He's in Hong Kong now. I mean, stuck there because of COVID. He cannot come back. Investment banker, tons of money. Okay, definitely civil service people, MOM, MOE, MCCY. Definitely a bunch of entrepreneurs, including a tech startup person who is many millions of dollars richer than I am. Tech startup. Okay, you ask her, why do you study philosophy? Usually, I would not change a thing. I would still study philosophy because I really enjoyed that. It taught me so much critical thinking. Anyone knows who the recent Singapore's first 金马奖 winner, Singapore's first Golden Horse Award director, philosophy graduate from my own department? I graded his honors thesis. Okay, so our people are kind of everywhere. I think that philosophy, like any of the humanities subjects, there's nothing useless about it. It's about whether or not you know how to use it to train your ability to think, to express yourself, to be able to persuade people, to be able to add value to the world, however you do so. By the way, of course, we live in a world which is so technology-driven. Please go and make sure that you have some basic technology skills. That one applies to everybody, even if you're physics or chemistry. Okay? Okay. History. What makes it different from Asian studies? And what makes it different sort of studying in university versus studying in A-levels?
Studying at a university as opposed to studying
A-levels.
Oh, A-levels. Okay, I would say that, let me start with that part first, perhaps. I've supervised quite a few students for JC doing their H3 projects. And I would say that this is where the extension is, and this is where you can see the difference between A-levels and what you're doing at university in terms of you being able to frame your own topics, engage in research in much more depth. Certainly, when we're examining history, it's not so much about being exam-driven. It's much more about the process of learning, as I had mentioned earlier, that whole idea of the craft of the historian. How do you immerse yourself in the material? How do you become familiar with sources? How do you know how to evaluate them? I think this is quite a discernible difference as opposed to preparation for exam skills, that you need for your A-levels. So that's one thing. Asian studies, the difference, I think history and Asian studies, there is a complementarity. Obviously, if you were looking at Asian history, for instance, there is a complementarity. So what I would say is we quite often see students that might have an Asian studies interest, but they'll also take history modules because it gives them a broader context. It allows them to situate their particular topic of interest or their area of interest, if it's say Japanese studies as Asian studies. If they take modules looking at Japan's place in the world, so East Asia more broadly, history, it's a complementarity between history and Asian studies.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah. So there are some questions regarding CHS. I think in a sense, maybe I want to not worry about that. But nonetheless, some people are asking, what are good things to pair with our humanities subjects as a second major? Let's do it both ways, right? So either we are the second major or we are the first major. What would be a good thing to pair that is not a humanities? And just curious, let's go around one round doing this. Susan, you want to start first? Yeah.
Sorry, rephrase me the question again, please. I was typing the answer to one of the other questions.
So either we are the first major or someone else is the first major. What would be a good pairing?
In our faculty or out of
anywhere? Anyone has any good ones first? I'll tell you a few first. Maybe surprising. Philosophy and mathematics, philosophy and physics. People may not realize this. Okay. Definitely philosophy and lit, philosophy and psychology, philosophy and political science. These are the more obvious ones, but philosophy and physics, philosophy and math.
I don't know about good because I don't know whether it's practicable, but I can tell you what I would like to do if I were a student, so in this day and age. Oddly enough, I might like to do literature, which is of course my love and first subject, but I would also be highly intrigued by the possibilities in SDE, which is the School of Design, so, and every time I've listened to their lectures, I just have so many more ideas to play with, and it's really exciting. So, and there are lots, in fact, of overlaps. For example, both of us like thinking about space, both of us like thinking about, conceptions or abstractions and things like that. So that would be my choice. I don't know whether it's theoretically possible, but I would certainly think it was interesting. And of course, I would love to pair with history, which would have been the other subject I would have done if I hadn't actually gone to Cambridge to read literature.
Yeah. Leslie? Yeah.
Yeah. So we actually have structured double majors with Chinese language and communications and new media and philosophy. So what this means is that there are some modules that you can double count towards your major requirements in both majors. Other suitable pairings within FASS include like psychology and sociology, right? This makes a lot of sense. outside of FASS, like in FOS, some pairings which would be very good actually would be include like biological sciences, right? Statistics, right? And if you're going outside of CHS, right, computing would be a very good choice. Many of our majors actually go on to do a minor in a foreign language as well, right? Because we are interested in languages.
Yeah. Donna?
I'm just really going to come up with some ideas here, because I was thinking what works nicely together would be something like history and philosophy, or history and political science, where you can build one on the other, or an Asian studies focus. But beyond that, I think it would be really fascinating to combine things like history and the sciences. So whether that's physics or beyond, because we do have courses that look at the history of science, but if you're approaching from the science angle, I think you would bring something quite different to it. And we do tend to, for some of our courses, we have engineering students that will take a lot of history modules. So they find that it is a nice sort of complement to what they're doing, but they can also think about taking modules where you're looking at urban development, for instance, the history of cities, for instance, and something like engineering might complement that really nicely.
Robin? Yeah.
I'm going to push the boat out. I'm going to tell you that every subject can be complemented with theater studies, and I don't mean that in a glib way. So you're coming into CHS, you will have the opportunity to have tasters in Asian studies, in social sciences. You don't know what you don't know, right? Sorry to be solipsistic. You don't know it. But what if after that first you come in, you want to do chemistry. Then after taking the integrated modules, you kind of think, okay, theater studies is pretty cool. You still do your major in mathematics. And then you decide that I'm going to do theater because that will challenge me and make me think in a slightly different way, and I will do. So you're going to be, so everybody is thinking, oh, the practical subject, maths and econs, maths and econs, maths and econs. And then suddenly, maths and theater studies. Okay, this is interesting. You will get people's attention because you are probably the only one that has a maths and theater. And then immediately it will be a talking point that, why did you take? You're a mathematics major. Why did you take? So then you have this whole idea that, I was exposed to this, I have those skills. So my point here is, come into the CHS, go and dip your toes and fingers in the integrated modules. Maybe you will discover that philosophy isn't what you thought it was. Maybe you think that literature wasn't what it thought it was, because, my friends, we teach it very differently at the university, right? So what you know from IB, what you know from A-level studies, throw it away, right? It's not applicable here anymore. The way the approach, the way the doors that we open, not the same. And then you decide what do you want to do, because I think it would be very cool. You go to Google and says, I have a degree, I have a BSc, but my first major is in biological science and my second major is in theater. I say, okay, that's interesting. You're going to get people's attention. I'm not asking you to go and anyhow put things together. Okay, Dr. Robin asked me to take chemistry and then obscures. No, go with your same thing. Interest, aptitude, hard work, but then give yourself an edge. What is that? Don't do what everybody else is doing, right? Find something that you, and give yourself the chance to discover things.
Can I just add on to what Robin just said? So, Robin was saying something about, you don't know what you don't know, right? And that was exactly my experience when I was entering NUS as an undergraduate. I was, when I first joined NUS as an undergrad, I was determined to major in economics, right? Because I had studied that in JC, right? I didn't know about the subject linguistics at all, right? And then after my first semester, actually, when I took the entry module, and then that completely changed my life. I never looked back, right? And who cares about economics now?
Oh, come on. Our econs colleagues are just next door.
No, I back Leslie on this one.
You're good friends too, Robin, I think your mic is out. Yeah.
Oh, just...
Okay, you're good now.
Sorry. Okay, you just really do need to open yourself up to this, because you don't know. Right now, you can plan. you know, in the world right now, you could have planned for a vacation in 2020 and look how that shows. Because just go with it. That is the best advice I can give you. If you want to know what goes well with theater studies, everything. But you pick one that works for you.
Okay, let's do another just final 2 rounds. Okay, one question, in fact, has been coming up by just being asked in different guises. People are worried about how hard is it to study that particular subject. Is it a lot of readings? I think one person asked, does history require a lot of readings? Another person asked, how am I being assessed for philosophy? Is it very hard and all that? Shall we just take a few sentences for each of us, each of our majors? Yeah, Susan, you want to go first? Yeah, perhaps.
So what's the question again? To focus
how hard is it? Is it very hard to major in? Yeah.
I would sort of say that my guess is that the first semester will be the hardest, partly because that's the real transition. That's when your muscles have been used to carrying one kind of load, and all of a sudden your muscles have to carry a different kind of load. So you're used to having 2 years in which to sort of swan very slowly through something like 4 or 5 texts, and your teachers will walk through every single page with you. Now you have to be a lot more independent, and you may be doing something like 5 to 6 texts on one module per semester, which is a really frightening kind of jump at first from students. But the point is, nobody has ever died yet, so everybody has managed to survive, and you become actually a lot stronger. You learn how to be a lot more efficient with reading and knowing what's significant, what's not significant. So if you're prepared to sort of stick with it and not, run away crying to econs or maths where life looks like it's got fewer readings, I would sort of say that by the end of your second semester, you will in fact be in a new rhythm, and you'll wonder why you ever found it difficult in the first place. So that's my take on it.
Donna, perhaps? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll jump in and echo a lot of what Susan was saying. Really, I think there will be an adjustment, of course, but it is also a gradual process because you are learning and you are developing your writing style, your skills in terms of how you research, how you read, and learning to read effectively. Reading critically is very different from just reading. So I know with history, there's always this panic that, it'll be whole books. It's not about volume. You might be exposed to different types of scholarship, primary documents, for instance, academic articles, but quite often our tutorial, the discussion groups are all about breaking down those readings and showing you how to make them accessible. So definitely it is a process that you go through, but you really do learn very valuable skills by working through that process and learning how to read effectively, for instance.
Yeah. Leslie? Yeah.
I think, I guess linguistics is not quite like history or literature, where there are a lot of these texts that you have to, primary texts that you have to plow through. So the kinds of readings that we do are more of the research that has been done, right? Those are the things that you have to read. That's how you learn. Right, and it's just part of the process, like what Donna and Susan were saying. I don't think it's particularly onerous, and after a few semesters, you probably get into the rhythm.
Robin?
Not going to sugarcoat it. There will be readings and lots of it.
Yeah.
And it's all good for you.
Yeah.
It really is. And again, my colleagues have said it. It is not leisure reading. It is targeted. Your teacher, I will tell you guys, I'm not overselling it, it's the truth. FASS has the best educators, and they will give you the right strategies, will hone your reading skills, but you got to attend the lectures, yeah? It doesn't come out. You got to attend the lectures, listen to them, follow the tutorials. It's all guided and targeted. It's not the good note, okay, that 2 book over there, go and read, come back to me on Tuesday. None. So it's not like that. It's not about the volume. It's not about the amount of things that you have to read. But the reading is necessary for you to be informed and equipped and know how to research, even in theater studies, especially in theater studies, right? So don't run away from it. Deal with it. Embrace it. Go to the lectures. Go to the classes. Read everything that the lecturers give you in terms of the prompt and material. Then you will find your way around it. It's not that difficult.
So for philosophy, the lower level classes, you might be surprised. At the intro level, the big class, I used to teach that. We use MCQs, but they're actually very hard MCQs. We only set 8 MCQs every week. There are 10 of these across 10 weeks. And I know that my students spend about on average 2 hours doing those 8 MCQ questions because they discuss with each other, they fight with each other. I love it when they email me to say that, Prof. Loy, we have been debating the whole week, Yeah, so lower level, we tend to use MCQ, short answers, but as you move further up to year 2 and 3, then a lot of essays will come in. But usually about 2 essays, either 1 to 2 essays in each module. Readings wise, we tend to give shorter readings, but those readings are not that easy. I'll just say that first, right? Because we really expect you to sort of pay very careful attention to the logic of the things that are being argued, right? You sort of like, you thought that these 5 pages, like it's only 5 pages, but I finished reading, and then you look at, the guy just found so many things to talk about in the first 2 paragraphs, which I never even noticed. So that is the kind of thing that, by the way, it's not just philosophy. I think in general, university level engagement is just, you just have to be ready for that. But don't worry, like what like what Prof. Loon have been saying, we will guide you. That's our job, okay? Our job is to make sure that you go through this and survive, even though there'll be pain along the way, but you will survive, okay? And you will learn something from it, okay? There's a bunch of questions. Again, many people are kind of comparing us with other places and all that. I don't know how to, NUS, NTU, NUS, SMU, Yale, NUS, I'm sure all been asked before already. Does anyone want to give it a crack? Because I have a standard thing to say, but I don't know.
Well, my standard thing to say is obviously we are better, but I suppose it's not politically correct to say that,
When I give outreach talks, I often, for FASS in the past, my other person there is often an NTU person from the English department there. Yeah, nice guy. What I'll say is this. We are a very, very good university. We are the largest and most comprehensive humanities and social science offering in Singapore, bar none. It's not even close. Okay? That is not even close. Okay? I was saying that, this is a very good place for you to be if your interest is in the humanities and social sciences, right? If you want to be in Singapore, for instance, right? We have very strong, kind of expertise in Asia-related stuff, but not just Asia-related stuff as well. And our people, even in the theatre studies is a good example. We're very industry connected as well. We know the people, out there. We don't just sort of teach you stuff and then forget about you, right? So we are a good place. I cannot say, if you catch me for coffee, I can tell you more, but the more bakwa kind of stuff. But I would say that you won't go wrong by coming here. But at the end of it, really, you have to decide for yourself. You have to ask yourself what your own interests are. Right. If you want to experience to go to a campus in the middle of town, we can't give you that. That's called SMU. We are in Clementi. I'm sorry. Okay.
At least we're not in Jurong.
Don't like that, yo. Don't like that. Those are my friends too. Okay.
So I just want to add on. I mean, so when you're selecting your, the university that you want to go to, you're not just choosing the major. You're choosing an entire ecosystem.
Yes.
Right? And that's exactly what Loy was trying to say.
Yeah.
Right. And we have a very strong and cohesive ecosystem over here.
Yeah. The alumni who have graduated from us is a very large number of people. That means that the middle management, senior management in the places you are joined, what's the likelihood that you throw a stone that is an NUS grad as opposed to some other grad? You have to do the odds yourself. Okay, so some of these things do matter. They do add up, even though it's not really about the subject of study. We're now at 48 already. I actually want to kind of stick to time. Don't worry if you have questions that are unanswered. We'll find a way to construct an FAQ and all that. We'll always be interested to make sure that things are answered. But let's go around either once or twice to see whether everybody has any parting bit of advice for students who are either thinking about the humanities or perhaps not necessarily as a major, but maybe the person is thinking of majoring in something else. Any word of advice for prospective students in general? Let me go. Robin, you want to begin first? Yeah.
Well, I've been hard selling, so I'm just going to really dial it back a bit and I just share with you why the university education has transformed me, because it was the one and only time in my education career, well, the rest of it, coming from A-levels, where I could actually take charge and own what I wanted to study. And I think you should too, right? And I'll go back to what I've said before. And I've seen this come through. The 3 things that would really lead you to success in any major: interest, aptitude, right? So you got to have these. You have these 3, you're done. If you have none of these 3, don't even go there. Don't take a subject that you have no aptitude, no interest, and you don't want to put in the work to it just because it's labeled practical. That's not the way to go. You got to take charge of your own education, because degree scroll is going to stay with you for the rest of your life. So you need to make sure that it's shaped. And whatever your parents will advise you, they love you, they come from a place of love. But children, they're not going to live in the world that you're going to live in. They're not going to get a job in the world that you are going to. So their advice or anxieties have a certain limit. So you need to keep in touch with where you want to be, what you want to do, and see what you can do now to get where you want to be, right? So it's about you. So really focus on you and what you want. And then, of course, you have to negotiate with your parents. Then you go to them with a strong position, right? Don't go and say, university prof say you're going to die already. Not going to, I didn't.
Hey, hello, don't like that, are you?
Basically, I'm telling you that you should go to your parents and say, this is the reason why I think this major is good for me, right? And then listen to what they have to say. Okay, that's me. Shut up.
Yeah. Leslie, please.
So I guess similar to what Robin was saying, right? I mean, we now live in a changing world, right? Technologies are improving every day, right? Knowledge is constantly being updated, right? So and when that happens, right, what becomes important is less so much of the content that you know, right? But how to ask questions, right? How to examine questions from different perspectives, how to make connections between complex ideas, and how to communicate these ideas effectively, right? And these are precisely what FASS has to offer.
Fantastic. Donna?
I will just follow on with what Leslie was saying. I think you're making a really great point. You think about the digital age, information is everywhere. Right? How do we make sense of the information that is around us? And I think, you know, a grounding in humanities is actually really important in that regard, because it gives you context, it allows you to understand perspective. And I think it allows you to have more than just a superficial understanding of the world around you. So I would say if you're coming into university, see this as a wonderful chance to really broaden your horizons, be open-minded, be prepared to think critically, and be prepared to be challenged. I think the whole, you know, you really want to have that grappling and maybe feeling like you're knocking your head with certain topics, but quite often that is part of the growth process and your own intellectual development.
Thank you so much. Susan?
Actually, what I have to say is very much like what Robin said, but, you know, in fact, I suppose what I had sort of thought of earlier on when you sort of said for us to think about words of advice to give to students, it was the fact that, in fact, a lot of times students come in and the questions they're asking are not their questions, but their parents' questions. You know, what you're hearing is the anxieties of the parents surfacing in the questions that the students are asking. But my take on it would be, with all due respect to your parents who are understandably anxious about your future, and as Robin says, who love you, follow your passion, because you're the one who's living the life. It's not your parents who are going to live your life. And if your passion is literature, do literature. If your passion is maths, do maths. So, and what I will also sort of say is, it's a bit sad to me that students come in thinking about what they're going to do when they're going out. In other words, you know, you've already shortcut the next 4 years and thought to what's going to happen when you're going out. And when I think back to my own university education, I sort of think of all the wasted opportunities, all the languages I never learned, all the things I didn't do. I wanted to learn fencing, ballroom dancing, lots of other things, and I never got to do any of those things. And before you know it, you're out of university, and then you never have the time again. So what I would sort of say is, think about the future, but enjoy your time in university, and don't only think about the future. But also, I mean, if you're worried about what you will do afterwards, then I will pass on my own father's words of advice, even though he fought with me about doing literature and said, go away and do law. What my father, in fact, sort of said was, have faith in the future. And in fact, I think it's a very hopeful kind of thing he was saying. And he's a scientist, by the way, not an FASS person at all. Have faith in the future basically means, yes, of course, we are in COVID times and we're in bad times and all the rest of it, but there will always be a place, you know, sort of somewhere out there for you. As one of the panelists said just now, right? I cannot think of any of my students who is out of a job except those who want to be out of a job, you know, so for me, and that is true even today. So, you know, so we look forward to seeing you here, and I hope to see you in my classes.
Yeah, on that last point, we really do have a few graduates who actually want to be post-starving artists, and that is really bad on our data, but that's what they want, right? It's not because because we somehow end up teaching them something they couldn't use. My word of advice really is, please understand. I said this in a previous session as well. Perhaps not all of you are there. If you're coming here, it's because you are getting a university education, right? It's not a vocation training school. Come here because you care about understanding the world, either the natural world or the human world. You want to understand it better. You want to be able to make it better, perhaps, right? Either by advancing knowledge or by making things happen in the world. Come here because that's what you are, not because you think that by checking a few boxes, you will get a job. That's not how the world actually works, right? So come here, if you care about understanding the human condition, yeah, then the humanities subject definitely is plausible. If this is your passion, your attitude, right? But at the end of the day, you got to go where you want to go. You got to sort of take charge and take ownership of your own learning because it's your life. So I hope that we have been useful and helpful to you and informative. Thank you very much. Yeah. And thank you very much.